She couldn't hear the music, but she was about to command the biggest stage on ice by listening with her skin. Samira Voss was 27, a deaf locksmith from Reykjavik with silver keys on her belt and rhythm hidden in her bones. While other dancers counted beats from speakers, Samira stood barefoot over subway grates and read the city's underground tremors like sheet music. Cold iron vibrated through her soles in stripes and pulses, and she mapped each shiver to movement until her body memorized songs. By day, she shaped locks with patient hands, filing tiny metal teeth, learning that precision was just another form of trust. By night, she trained in empty studios where silence pressed around her like snow and every mistake had nowhere to hide. Then a white envelope arrived from Seoul, carrying an invitation to open the televised World Ice Circus before millions of viewers. The offer glittered like a dream, but the venue was notorious for mechanical stages, rotating platforms, and trapdoors timed to music cues. Samira accepted anyway, because courage is not leaping after certainty, but stepping forward while uncertainty still grips your throat. In Seoul, the arena looked less like a theater and more like a giant watch cracked open, all gears, steel, and polished ice. Beneath the rehearsal floor, clockwork trapdoors snapped up and vanished in patterns the cast followed by hearing hidden countdown signals. Everyone else listened for cues dropped into their earpieces, while Samira watched bodies move a fraction too late to trust. The production team praised her talent, then forgot the simplest thing, leaving rehearsal rooms without visual timing marks or lighting signals. She stood in the center of that oversight, surrounded by music she could not access and instructions built for someone else's senses. For one brutal hour, she missed entrances, nearly clipped a rising platform, and felt the room's sympathy harden into doubt. A pair of jealous dancers noticed quickly, trading tight smiles and taking positions that blocked her sightline to the lead marker. Their sabotage was subtle and deniable, a shoulder angled here, a turn delayed there, just enough to make her seem unprepared. That night, alone in a rented apartment, Samira spread the show notes across the floor like blueprints for escaping a fire. She thought like a locksmith, because locks and problems both yield when you stop pushing harder and study their pattern. If the music would never reach her ears, she would build another way for the rhythm to reach her body. She bought thin white gloves and painted each finger joint with bands of neon color tied to counts in the choreography. Red marked the opening pulse, blue the glide, yellow the triple turn, and green the leap that skimmed the rink's mirrored edge. Under rehearsal lights, her own hands became moving score lines, tracing visible timing paths across the dark air before her chest. She also hauled a cheap subwoofer into the studio, pressed it against a hard suitcase lid, and stood barefoot on top. The bass climbed through plastic and bone in blunt waves, teaching her where the heavy downbeats landed even when melodies stayed absent. For faster sections, where vibrations blurred together, she trained her breathing to shorten and match spin counts to her heartbeat. Palm to sternum, eyes shut, she practiced turning on internal pulses until her body became its own metronome no one could cut off. Back at rehearsal, people stared when she entered glowing with painted gloves, carrying a suitcase like a strange mechanical drum. Then the music began, and Samira cut through the confusion with crisp, colored certainty, landing each phrase before the others expected it. The trapdoors still terrified her, because one mistimed step could swallow an ankle and end more than a performance. So she requested the technical schematics, spread them beside her lock tools, and studied the stage like a vault with deadly habits. She memorized every panel seam, every gear delay, every half second between a warning light flashing backstage and a floor section dropping. While others ran choreography from instinct, Samira rehearsed survival as carefully as art, tracing safe zones with chalk until they lived in muscle. The jealous dancers kept testing her, sliding out of sync and forcing the formations to wobble like shaking glass. Samira refused the bait because proving people wrong often wastes energy, better spent proving yourself ready. She shifted her focus from their shoulders to the reflected lights on the ice, using the rink itself as a giant timing mirror. When a formation changed, she read the rippling bands of color beneath everyone's skates and adjusted from the floor upward. In 3 days, the crew stopped seeing a performer with a limitation and started seeing an engineer of movement they had underestimated. A lighting technician helped refine her glove system, turning each backstage count cue into matching colored flashes she could track instantly. A costume tailor stitched thin reflective lines into her sleeves, so even peripheral vision could catch the timing arcs she created. An ice sweeper showed her where mirror frost formed first, revealing slippery patches before they widened into dangerous traps. Piece by piece, adaptation stopped being a private burden and became a shared design, the way difficult things should work. On dress rehearsal night, disaster nearly won anyway when a stagehand changed the trapdoor timing after a technical delay and forgot to tell her. Samira launched into a diagonal run, saw the seam split open where solid floor should have been, and twisted midair by instinct. She landed on one knee inches from the black opening, one glove skidding over steel teeth, her heartbeat punching like a fist. The arena froze, and for a second the silence felt enormous, not because she lived in it, but because everyone else had just entered it. She stood, dusted silver paint from her leg, demanded the new timing sheet, and returned to her mark with colder focus. On performance day, Seoul burned with winter light, and the arena filled with coats, cameras, and expectant faces layered to the rafters. Beneath her costume, Samira flexed her painted fingers and felt the subwoofer pulse one final time through the suitcase lid. She did not ask the fear to leave, because fear sharpened the edges of what mattered and reminded her to be exact. Instead, she translated fear into preparation, checking seams, counting breaths, pressing two fingers lightly to her heartbeat, like tapping home coordinates. Then the opening sequence began, and the stage unfolded in white fire, mirrored ice, and spinning bodies throwing prisms across the arena. Samira stepped into that storm with calm precision, following red, blue, yellow, and green pathways only she fully understood. Every challenge she had survived became visible there, transformed from obstacle into architecture beneath each turn and landing. She crossed the clockwork stage exactly between two rising panels, her feet missing the trapdoor edges by the width of a key. She spun not by hearing the orchestra swell, but by riding the drumming pulse inside her own ribs. Around her, the jealous dancers fell back into formation, no longer gatekeepers, just part of a larger pattern she now commanded. Then came the final passage, a sprint toward the rink of mirror ice, designed to fracture into glittering shards beneath the leap. The surface looked like a frozen galaxy cracked with light, beautiful enough to tempt hesitation and dangerous enough to punish it. Samira measured the count through her gloves, caught the green cue, and drove forward with every lesson hammered into muscle. She hit the edge, rose above the shattering mirror ice, and hung for a breath in a storm of silver fragments. When she landed, the arena offered silence so complete it felt sacred. In that suspended stillness, millions of people watched a woman who could not hear transform timing, danger, and exclusion into grace. Then the audience exploded upward in the loudest standing ovation the venue had ever recorded. A roar she felt thunder through the stage. Samira did not hear the history she made, but she saw tears on faces, hands striking together, bodies rising like a tide. Her real victory was not becoming superhuman, but becoming systematic, turning missing access into visible tools anyone could improve. If your environment was not built for you, stop waiting for permission and start designing cues your strengths can read. If people block your view, find a deeper signal, the floor beneath them, the pattern beneath the pattern, the truth beneath noise. Break big fear into measurable counts, because most impossible things shrink when translated into the next exact step. Use what is already yours, your hands, your pulse, your habits, your craft, and make them into instruments instead of excuses. Samira proved that resilience is not pretending the music exists for everyone equally, but building a way to dance anyway. And sometimes the strongest performance begins when the world forgets your cues and you decide to paint your own.